So what about jobs? Well, this is kind of an interesting study because usually when a new technology comes in, it may destroy some jobs, but it also has the potential to create new jobs. So right now, Gartner and others are projecting that probably there'll be 2.3 million new jobs created by 2020 just in the artificial intelligence space. And about 1.8 will be eliminated by artificial intelligence. So they think 2020 is probably the pivotal year where this net effect of the increase versus the destruction of jobs will begin to emerge. But remember that a lot of the innovations in the past have been associated with this temporary eliminations of jobs followed by some type of a recovery, and then the business transformation begins to take shape, and that will, we think that AI will likely follow that route. And that's very consistent with the Gartner hype cycle that we've been using as our way to kind of look at different technologies and where they're at. So even if your job isn't being replaced, there's a lot of potential for artificial intelligence to be able to help improve your productivity. So some people think that will eliminate millions of middle and low-level positions because more intelligence can be brought to bear to workers in the field. But it also creates many new positions where highly skilled, new types of management, new management theories are going to be needed to be applied. And so not just the entry level and the low-skilled variety, but many changes to all levels of management inside companies. So now, probably, if you're looking at artificial intelligence now and the jobs that are out there, for the greatest value now, companies are focusing on how can they augment the abilities of the people that they have working for them now. So how could a mechanic working on a car to fix it be better informed or be able to query an intelligent advisor to be able to make that repair faster or make it more effectively? Now, this is going to require a lot of companies to transform their culture, to be able to think about what are the opportunities and threats to the people on the job. If they're helping to train these AI systems, will they feel threatened? That they're basically giving up their own knowledge to be able to be replaced by machines? I recall one study of Toyota where they programmed robots to try to mimic the best painters of the automobiles that they had, and the robots were very effective at it, and yet the people who were doing the painting, I'm sure they felt a bit disgruntled at the fact of having all those cameras watch them so that their methods and approaches could be reduplicated in a robot. So typically what we see in companies now, it's those jobs that are very routine, where you have repeatable tasks that are fairly easy to train a robot to do. And you can analyze those types of tasks for patterns and characterize those patterns very effectively. So we call that type of work routine work. Now, when we begin to think of non-routine work, we think of like the job of a manager or the job of a doctor and trying to do diagnosis where they're not going to see maybe the same patterns every day. And that's probably the situation where combinations of humans and artificial intelligence will perform much better as we see it being immersed into the companies and their operations. So probably by 2020, it's projected that 1 in 5 workers will be, if they're engaged in mostly non-routine tasks, they'll rely on AI to do a job. So still the non-routine tasks will have a lot of room for human judgment. And let's look at an example. Through 2022, many people feel that retail, for example, replacing a sales associate with a robot is just probably not going to cut it. That there's something special about that human interaction in a non-routine type fashion of how a really good salesperson connects with a customer to make that sale. That's going to be difficult to replace by AI. But maybe it's going to be a great way to augment customer experiences. And as we'll see in a case that we look at later on, this is an important role of technology to help assist that customer process. So I guess one of the things that we need to consider is, should you just take the current way you're doing things, interject AI into it in a new and novel way, or should you really rethink the entire process of how you go about doing things in your company, thinking about what should be done by humans and what should be done by artificial intelligence, and what's the pathway forward that you figure will begin to happen in your industry so that you can prepare for it. So this technology has a lot of promise of being very, very destructive in terms of how organizations conduct their business strategies and deal with their customers and suppliers, etc. So today's sources of competitive advantage for artificial intelligence are probably the fact that AI is helping organizations learn faster. It's helping organizations offer new services that they hadn't before. And it's leading to new business insights through discoveries that can be made by artificial intelligence algorithms. Now, the internal processes with people that are implementing artificial intelligence solutions, they're seeing some efficiency gains over their competitors, but I call the impact right now a bit lumpy. In other words, it's not the same for every organization that's engaging AI. In fact, there's evidence that different areas of the world have different artificial intelligence agendas. So there was one study that compared China, the United States, and the European Union, and all others. And across that spectrum, we see that existing workers will have to change their skill sets. That across that spectrum, everyone pretty much thinks that organizations' productivity will improve through AI. But some of the differences that we're seeing is that in China, for example, there's a perception that more of the workforce will be reduced than in the United States. And United States executives think that more of the workforce will be reduced than do their counterparts in the European Union. Similarly, people say whether or not they have fear of artificial intelligence, and that has some differential conclusions based